Welcome back to Linas Romantasy collection, where the alphas run hot and the heroines never back down. Quick question for the pack before we start the drama. Where are you listening from today? Tell me in the comments and drop a cat emoji if your own pet judges your audiobook choices just like Pookie. We have a fun one today. It brings the heat, it brings the laughs, and it involves a stubborn human baker, a fierce Alpha King on his knees, and a huge Maine Coon who steals the show. Before we jump in, if you want to support the channel and grab early access to stories like this, hit that join button down below. It keeps the oven hot and the fresh stories baking. Now, get comfortable. The timer is buzzing, and the king is about to meet his match. Let's read. Chapter 1. The neon sign of the bakery hummed outside the shop window. Inside the bakery, the air smelled of warm yeast and sugar. Pearl Kingsley wiped the wood counter with a damp rag. Her dark curls were tied back in a messy knot, but a few strands escaped to tickle her neck. She didn't mind the flour on her apron. It felt like progress. After months of being told her place was in a kitchen making dinner for a man who didn't care, she finally had a kitchen of her own. Pookie sat on a high stool near the register. The Maine Coon was a cloud of gray fur and bad attitude. His tufted ears flicked as he watched a fly. He let out a sharp meow that sounded more like a bark for attention. "In a minute, Pookie," Pearl said. She grabbed a small bowl of premium salmon flakes. "You just had a treat 10 minutes ago." The bell above the door chimed. The sound was sharp. A man stepped inside, and the temperature in the room seemed to jump 10 degrees. He was tall, with shoulders that took up the entire doorway. His hair was black as coal, and his eyes were a strange, burning amber. He wore a dark shirt that hugged his chest. He didn't just walk into the room. He took it over. "If he growls at me one more time, I'm buying a water spray bottle." Pearl didn't look up right away. She kept her focus on Pookie. She knew the type. Powerful men expected the world to stop for them. Her ex, Richard, was a human, but he had that same ego. He spent $80,000 on a watch just to show he could. Then expected Pearl to stay home and wait for his call. "We close in 5 minutes," Pearl said, without a glance at the stranger. The man stood at the counter. His presence felt like a storm cloud. He didn't speak. He just watched her. Pearl could feel his gaze on her skin. It wasn't creepy. It was heavy. "I need coffee," the man said. His voice was deep. It had a vibration that made the glass jars on the shelf rattle. "The machine is off," Pearl lied. She reached down to scratch Pookie behind the ears. The cat leaned into her hand, then hissed at the man. "Your animal is rude," the man noted. He didn't flinch at the hiss. He leaned forward. His scent hit her. Fresh pine and rain. It was a clean smell, not like the thick cologne Richard used to wear. "He's a good judge of character," Pearl shot back. She finally met his amber eyes. She didn't bow her head. She didn't look away. "I'm Pearl, and we are out of coffee." The man's jaw tightened. "Do you know who I am?" "A guy who can't read a clock?" He blinked. No one spoke to Alpha King Corbin this way. His pack members usually hit the floor when he used that tone, but this woman just stood there, with flour on her nose. She looked at him with hazel eyes that held no fear. "I'm Corbin," he said. He tried to push his power into the words. It was a mental shove that made other wolves fall to their knees. Pearl just shrugged. She picked up Pookie and cradled the giant cat like a baby. "Nice to meet you, Corbin. Now, unless you want to buy a day-old muffin, I have a floor to mop." Corbin felt his wolf stir in his chest. The beast wanted to howl. It wanted to mark the room. But mostly, it was confused. Why wasn't she shaking? I'm not leaving until I get what I came for, he said. Pearl walked to the door and held it open. The cool night air rushed in. Look, buddy, you're handsome, sure, but I'm strictly a cat person. Your whole big dog energy doesn't work on me. Corbin froze. The word cat felt like a slap. His wolf went wild inside his head. It clawed at his ribs. He stepped out into the night, his mind a blur of confusion and heat. Chapter 2. Corbin paced the alleyway behind the bakery. The brick walls felt too close. His skin was too tight. He could hear Pearl inside. She was singing a song to that puffball of a cat. The sound of her voice made his heart hammer against his ribs like a punch to the gut. She has a cat. A literal, hissing fuzzball. The moon goddess is mocking me. He couldn't just walk away. The bond was a tether. It pulled him back toward the door. He had to show her. He had to make her see what he really was. Humans usually screamed or ran when they saw the truth. He hoped she would at least look impressed. Pearl stepped out the back door a moment later. She carried a bag of trash. She stopped when she saw him standing near her rose gold SUV. Still here, Corbin? Stalking is a bad look, she said. She tossed the bag into the bin with a loud thud. Watch, Corbin said. He didn't wait for her to answer. He let the change take him. It wasn't a choice anymore. His bones snapped. The sound was like dry sticks breaking. His skin ripped and healed in a blur. His spine stretched. The pain was sharp, a sting he had felt 1,000 times, but he didn't make a sound. In seconds, a giant wolf stood where the man had been. His fur was midnight black. His amber eyes glowed in the dark alley. He stood 5 feet tall at the shoulder. He was a creature of myth, built for war and speed. He let out a low huff of breath, waiting for the scream. Pearl didn't scream. She didn't run. She crossed her arms over her chest and tilted her head. Wow, she said. Corbin puffed out his chest. He felt proud. You're just a giant dramatic dog, Pearl said. She started to laugh. It was a bright, honest sound. All that brooding, and you just have a lot of fur. Do you know how much vacuuming I'd have to do? Pookie sheds enough as it is. The wolf's ears dropped. His tail, which had been held high, tucked between his legs. He wasn't a dog. He was the king. He was the apex predator of Aethelgard. Pearl walked closer. She didn't seem to care that his teeth were the size of steak knives. She reached out and patted his nose. Her touch was warm. You're cute in a scary way, she whispered. But I told you, I like cats. Corbin felt his ego crumble. This woman was impossible. He didn't know how to handle someone who laughed at his beast. He lowered his head until his chin touched the damp pavement. He let out a long, high-pitched whimper. It was a sound of pure defeat. Pearl sighed. Her face softened. Oh, don't do that. You're going to make me feel bad. The wolf nudged her hand with his wet nose. He whimpered again, louder this time. He was begging. The king of the packs was on his belly in the dirt, asking a human girl to change her mind. Fine, Pearl said, rolling her eyes. You can come by tomorrow, as a human, and we can talk. But if you shed on my SUV, the deal is off. The wolf let out a bark of joy. He watched her go back inside and lock the door. He stayed in the alley for a long time, his tail wagging against the brick wall. Chapter 3. The next evening, an obsidian black armored sedan pulled up to the curb in front of Pearl's apartment. It didn't make a sound. Corbin stepped out, wearing a suit that fit his frame like a second skin. He didn't have his usual pack members with him. He had told Gideon and Ryland to stay at the pack house. He needed a night without their jokes. He knocked on Pearl's door. He felt a bead of sweat on his neck. He was the Alpha. He had fought wars. Why was his heart racing? Pearl opened the door. She wore a simple yellow dress that made her hazel eyes pop. She looked like a drop of sunshine. "You look nice," Corbin said. He felt shy. When she looked at him, his brain seemed to stall. "Thanks. You look like you're going to a funeral," Pearl teased. She stepped out and locked her door. "Where are we going? Somewhere with white tablecloths and tiny food?" Corbin opened the car door for her. "I made a reservation at the Gilded Oak. I bought out the whole floor so we wouldn't be disturbed." Pearl stopped. She didn't get in the car. "You did what?" "Corbin, that's too much. I don't want a whole floor. I want to talk to you, not an empty room." "But I wanted it to be perfect," Corbin said. "Perfect is being real," Pearl replied. She pointed down the street. "There's a taco truck 3 blocks away. They have the best carnitas in the city. Let's go there." Corbin looked at his expensive car. He looked at his suit. Then he looked at Pearl's grin. He sighed and closed the car door. "Fine, tacos it is." They walked side by side. Corbin kept his pace slow to match hers. The sidewalk was crowded, but people moved out of his way without him saying a word. His heavy vibe was still there, even if he was trying to hide it. "Take that, Richard. You wanted my dreams dead in an apron, but now I'm being courted by a literal king." They sat on a metal bench near the truck. Pearl ate with gusto, not caring about the salsa on her thumb. Corbin watched her, fascinated. Richard had once told her she ate too much. Corbin thought she looked like she was enjoying life for the first time. "So," Pearl said, wiping her mouth, "what's the deal with the wolf thing? Is it a family curse, or did you get bitten?" "I was born this way," Corbin said. "My father was the king before me. It's in the blood." "Richard would have hated you," Pearl laughed. "He was so boring. He wanted everything to be perfect and quiet. He told me my bakery was a waste of time. He said a wife shouldn't work." Corbin's eyes flashed amber. A low growl started in his throat. He didn't like the way her voice changed when she said that name. He could smell the bitter ash of her old hurt. "He was a fool," Corbin said. His voice was like rolling thunder. "A woman like you should have everything she wants." Pearl looked at him, surprised by the heat in his words. She felt a tingle in her stomach. "You mean that?" "I don't lie, Pearl," he said. He reached out and tucked a curl behind her ear. His hand was huge, but his touch was light. Chapter 4. A few days later, Corbin took Pearl to the edge of the city. He drove the obsidian sedan deep into the woods where the trees grew tall and thick. This was packland. The air was cool here, and the light filtered through the leaves in golden streaks. "Why are we here?" Pearl asked. She stepped out of the car. Her boots crunched on the fallen leaves. "I can't keep hiding what I do," Corbin said. He looked toward the heart of the forest. "My people live here. I am their leader, Pearl. It's more than just shifting into a wolf. There is a hierarchy, rules, laws. I just want 5 minutes without Gideon asking me to sign treaty papers." He led her to a clearing with a stone altar in the center. The place felt old. It felt important. "If I tell you everything, you have to keep it a secret," Corbin said. Our world is hidden for a reason. Humans fear what they don't understand. If the wrong people knew where we were, my pack would be in danger. Pearl nodded. She looked at the stone altar. I understand. I'm good at keeping secrets. I didn't even tell Aunt Tess about your wolf form. It's more than a promise, Corbin said. He held out a small, silver-lined knife. It's a blood bond silence. You swear an oath. If you try to tell a secret you shouldn't, it will feel like a sharp sting in your chest. It won't kill you, but it will stop you. Pearl narrowed her eyes. She didn't like the idea of something controlling her. She had spent too long under Richard's thumb. You want me to take a magic oath? It's the only way my pack will accept you being here, Corbin explained. I trust you, Pearl, but they need to know the secrets are safe. Pearl looked at the knife, then at Corbin. She saw the worry in his eyes. He wasn't trying to boss her around. He was trying to protect his family. She respected that. Okay, she said. I'll do it, but I have a condition. Corbin tilted his head. Anything. I know you wolves like to change people, Pearl said. She crossed her arms. I love being human. I love my bakery. I love that I don't have to eat raw steak. I am not shifting, Corbin. Not now. Corbin stepped closer. He could feel the heat radiating off her. Pearl, the bond will get stronger. You might want to one day. Maybe, she said. When I hit 35, that gives me enough time to live my human life and get used to the idea. If we are still together then, we can talk about it. But until then, I stay exactly as I am. Corbin looked at her. She was stubborn, witty, and completely human. He shouldn't agree. An alpha's mate should be a wolf. But the thought of losing her light was worse than breaking 1,000 years of tradition. 35, he agreed. I can wait, Pearl smiled. It was a bright, radiant look that made his heart skip. She took the knife and made a tiny nick on her finger. She pressed it to the stone. I swear, she whispered. The air in the clearing seemed to shimmer. Pearl felt a warm hum in her blood. The deal was struck. Chapter 5. The sun dipped low behind the trees in the sacred forest of Aethelgard. Shadows stretched across the stone altar like long fingers. Pearl Kingsley stood her ground as the hum of the blood bond silence settled in her chest. The oath felt like a warm pulse under her skin. She looked up at Corbin. His amber eyes caught the fading light. He looked like a king from an old book, but she saw the man under the crown. I need you to hear me, Pearl said. She tucked a curl behind her ear. I swore the oath. I will keep your secrets, but my life belongs to me. Corbin moved a step closer. The heat from his body hit her like a wave. He didn't use his alpha voice this time. He just waited. I love my life, Pearl continued. She touched the honeysuckle locket at her throat. I love my shop. I love being able to walk down a street without smelling every lie and fear. I am a human. I want to stay that way. When she looks at me like that, my brain completely short-circuits. Say something smart, Corbin. Corbin ran a hand through his black hair. He looked toward the thick wall of trees. The bond between us is a tether, Pearl. My wolf wants to mark you. He wants to bring you into the pack in every way. It's a pull in my gut that never stops. He can wait, Pearl shot back. She didn't budge. I have goals. I want to build my business. I want to be me for a while longer. When I hit 35, we can talk about the shift. That gives me years to prepare my heart. If you want a mate who is a partner and not a puppet, you have to respect that." Corbin let out a breath that sounded like a groan. He knew she was right. She wasn't a wolf who had to obey his push. She was a woman who stood in front of him with fire in her eyes. He admired her grit. It made his heart hammer a rhythm of pride. 35, Corbin repeated. The word felt heavy. That is a long time for a wolf to wait. Then you better get a hobby, Pearl teased. She reached out and patted his arm. His muscles felt like corded steel under his shirt. They walked back toward the gate. The peace of the forest was thick. Then Pearl stopped. Her grip on her locket tightened. Just outside the iron fence of the packland, a silver sports car sat idle. The engine purred. The tinted glass hid the driver, but Pearl knew that car. "Richard," she whispered. The name felt like a piece of glass in her throat. The silver car didn't move. It just sat there, a cold speck against the green trees. Then it sped away with a screech of tires. The air around Corbin shifted, turning sharp and heavy like a fire about to start. "Who is Richard?" Corbin asked. His voice dropped an octave. "My past," Pearl said. She looked at the dust cloud the car left behind. "And I think he just found out where I go on my days off." Chapter 6. The next morning, the sun baked the asphalt of the main road into Aethelgard. Pearl's rose gold SUV lurched to the side with a loud pop. The steering wheel jerked in her hands. She guided the car to the shoulder of the road. "Great," she muttered. She stepped out and looked at the rear tire. It was flat as a pancake. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't call a tow truck. She marched to the back of the SUV and popped the trunk. Inside sat her toolkit and the heavy steel tire iron she kept for protection. She grabbed the jack and the iron. She had changed tires before. Richard used to tell her it was a man's job, which was why she made sure she could do it in under 10 minutes. A low hum of a high-end engine approached. The obsidian black armored sedan pulled up behind her. Corbin stepped out. He wore a dark shirt and jeans today. He looked at the car, then at Pearl. She was already on her knees, placing the jack under the frame. "Pearl? What happened?" Corbin asked. He started to roll up his sleeves. "Tire gave up," Pearl said. She didn't look up. She fit the tire iron onto the first lug nut. She pushed down with her weight. The nut gave a sharp crack and started to turn. "Let me do that," Corbin said. He reached for the tool. Pearl pulled the tire iron back. "I got it, Corbin. Go back to your king stuff. I'm almost done." Corbin stopped. He watched her work. She didn't struggle. She moved with a plan. She spun the nuts off and tossed them into the hubcap. She gripped the heavy tire and hauled it off the studs. Her face was flushed from the heat, and a smudge of grease marked her cheek. "I have never met anyone so independent. Most people beg me for help." "You're just going to stand there and watch?" Pearl asked. She wiped sweat from her brow with her arm. "I'm impressed," Corbin admitted. He leaned against the hood of his sedan. "I've seen warriors with less focus than you." "Focus is how I survived my ex," Pearl said. She slid the spare tire onto the car. He wanted a doll, someone to sit still and look pretty while he did everything. "I learned to fix things because he hated when I touched his tools." She tightened the nuts and lowered the jack. She threw the flat tire into the back of her SUV. She stood up and dusted off her hands. She felt a surge of energy. She had done it. Corbin walked over. He didn't try to take over this time. He pulled a clean cloth from his pocket and reached out. He wiped the smudge of grease from her cheek. His touch sent a spark through her that made her knees feel weak. "You are a force of nature, Pearl Kingsley," he said. His voice was soft. Pearl smiled. She felt content. She liked that he watched her win instead of trying to win for her. But the memory of the silver car from the day before still hung in the back of her mind. Richard was a man who didn't like to lose. Chapter 7. The pack house was a giant building made of stone and dark wood. It sat on a hill that looked over the forest. As Pearl climbed out of her rose gold SUV, she felt a dozen pairs of eyes on her. The air here smelled of wood smoke and raw power. Corbin met her at the front steps. Behind him stood two men who looked like they were made of muscle and bad news. Gideon and Rylan. They were the Gamma and Beta of the pack. They crossed their arms and watched her approach. As Pearl reached the top step, Gideon let out a low growl. It was a test. He wanted to see if the human would flinch. Pearl stopped. She didn't move back. She looked Gideon right in his gray eyes. Then she looked down at his feet. "You're Gideon, right?" she asked. The man blinked. "Yeah?" "Wipe your boots," Pearl said. She pointed to a clump of mud on his heavy leather shoes. "I don't care how big a wolf you are. If you're going to stand on this porch while I'm here, you keep it clean. I have a shop to run, and I don't have time to track mud everywhere." Rylan let out a bark of laughter. Gideon's mouth dropped open. He looked at Corbin, then back at Pearl. He took a step back and scraped his boots on the mat. "My ex was an alpha, and look how that turned out. These guys are just bigger dogs." "She's feisty," Rylan noted. He gave Pearl a nod of respect. "She's the Luna," Corbin said. His voice had a ring of pride that made Pearl's heart do a flip. They walked inside. The main hall was a sea of people. Men and women stopped what they were doing. The chatter died down. It was a silence that could cut glass. Pearl felt the weight of their stares. She was a human in a world of monsters. But she didn't drop her gaze. She kept her head high. "Is this everyone?" Pearl asked. Her voice carried in the quiet room. A woman with white hair stepped forward. She was a healer. She looked at Pearl with wise eyes. "We have not had a human in this house for 100 years. "Well, I hope you've dusted since then," Pearl joked. A ripple of soft laughter went through the room. The tension snapped. People started to move again. They saw that she wasn't a threat. She was just a girl with a sharp tongue and a kind smile. Pearl looked at Corbin. He was staring at her with such adoration that she felt heat rise to her cheeks. He looked like he wanted to pick her up and carry her away. "You did great," he whispered. "I just told a giant wolf to clean his shoes," Pearl said. She felt a tingle of excitement. "I think I'm going to like it here." Chapter 8. Corbin arrived at Pearl's apartment later that night. He had left the pack house and the politics behind. He just wanted peace. He took off his jacket and sat on the small sofa. Pookie was already there. The Maine Coon sat on the back of the couch like a gargoyle. His yellow eyes tracked Corbin's every move. He let out a low hiss that sounded like steam escaping a pipe. "We talked about this, Pookie," Pearl called from the kitchen. She was making tea. Corbin tried to ignore the cat. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The gas fireplace in the corner hummed. The blue flames licked at the fake logs. There were no embers to stoke, just a steady, clean heat. It was a far cry from the wildfires of the pack house. Suddenly, a heavy weight landed on his lap. Corbin opened his eyes. Pookie had claimed him. The giant cat was kneading Corbin's black shirt with claws that felt like needles. Pearl?" Corbin asked. He stayed still. He didn't want to lose a finger. "Oh, he likes you!" Pearl said. She walked in with 2 mugs. She stopped and laughed. Look at that! He's claimed the king. Pookie let out a loud purr. It sounded like a small motor. He started to shed. Thick tufts of gray fur began to cover Corbin's expensive shirt. Corbin looked down at the mess. He was the most powerful wolf in Aethelgard, and he was being used as a bed by a cat. She actually likes his pack. They're like overly aggressive, heavily muscled golden retrievers. But this cat is the boss. I'm going to need a lint roller, Corbin muttered, but he didn't move the cat. He actually liked the weight. It felt domestic. It felt like a home. Pearl sat down next to him. She leaned her head on his shoulder. The scent of honeysuckle filled his nose. He felt a wave of contentment that he had never known. For the first time, he didn't feel like a king. He felt like a man. This is nice, Pearl whispered. It is, Corbin agreed. He reached out and scratched Pookie behind the ears. The cat leaned into the touch, closing his eyes. The room was quiet. The blue flames of the fireplace cast a soft light on the walls. Corbin felt a deep sense of peace. He had spent his life fighting for his pack, for his land, for his crown. But sitting here, with a human girl and a judgmental cat, felt like the biggest win of all. He realized that Pearl wasn't just his mate. She was the piece of him that had been missing. Chapter 9. The Peace Didn't Last. The next morning, a delivery man knocked on Pearl's door. He handed her a large white box with a silk ribbon. For Ms. Kingsley, the man said. Pearl took the box. Her stomach did a slow roll. She recognized the logo on the lid. It was a store Richard loved. She opened it in the kitchen. Inside lay a designer apron made of silk and lace. It was white, pristine, and completely useless for a real baker. On top of the apron sat a small card. Pearl picked it up. The handwriting was sharp and cold. You've had your fun, Pearl. It's time to stop playing with dogs and come home. Your place is in my kitchen, not in the dirt. I'm coming for what is mine. Richard. Pearl felt a wave of old anxiety wash over her. It was a cold chill that made her hands shake. Richard didn't see people. He saw things. He had seen her as a prize to be kept on a shelf. He didn't care about her dreams. He wanted them dead so he could feel big. Corbin walked in. He had been in the living room reading his book of poetry. He saw Pearl standing by the counter, her face pale. He saw the white box. "What is that?" he asked. He didn't wait for her to answer. He picked up the card. As he read the words, his demeanor changed. The calm warmth of the apartment vanished. In its place was a sharp, burning tension. His jaw set so tight, Pearl thought his teeth might crack. If anyone touches a single hair on her head, I will burn this entire city to ash. He thinks he can own you, Corbin said. His voice was a low growl that made the teacups rattle. He always did, Pearl said. She took the apron and threw it into the trash can. He doesn't understand that I'm not the same girl he left. I have something he will never have. What's that? Corbin asked. He stepped closer and took her hands in his. Accountability, Pearl said. She met his amber eyes. And a king who knows how to listen. Corbin pulled her into a hug. He held her tight, his heart thudding against hers. He felt a surge of protective rage. Richard was a ghost from her past, but he was trying to haunt her present. Corbin wouldn't let that happen. He would show this human what happened when you tried to steal from a wolf. He won't touch you, Pearl, Corbin vowed. I know, Pearl said. She leaned into him. She felt a flutter of nervous hope. She was afraid, but she wasn't alone. She had a pack now. And she had a tire iron in her SUV if things got messy. Chapter 10. The neon lights of Planet Pixel pulsed in shades of hot pink and electric blue. The air buzzed with crackling energy and the loud hum of arcade cabinets. She stepped into the noise. Behind her, Corbin loomed. His presence was a shadow that swallowed the light. He wore a dark shirt. It stretched tight across his broad chest and the thick muscles of his arms. He looked like he walked out of a myth and into a strip mall. "You want to play games?" Corbin asked. His voice rumbled above the beeps of the machines. "I want to crush you," Pearl said. She flashed a grin. They stopped at the air hockey table. The surface glowed. A fan hummed deep in the guts of the machine. Pearl grabbed a plastic mallet. Corbin took the other. His hand was so large, the handle vanished in his grip. He looked at the tiny plastic puck. He looked at Pearl. He looked confused. "If he growls at me one more time, I'm buying a water spray bottle." "The goal is simple," Pearl said. She leaned over the table. Her dark curls brushed her shoulders. "Don't let me score." The game began. Corbin moved in a blur. His wolf senses gave him an edge. He saw the puck before it even left Pearl's side. He hit it back with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. The plastic disc flew. Pearl blocked it. She used her wit. She knew he was fast, but he was also a bit too tense. He played like he was at war. "Relax, King," Pearl teased. She faked a shot to the left. Corbin lunged. He moved with the grace of a predator. But the puck went right. It slid into his goal with a soft chime. Corbin froze. His amber eyes went wide. He looked at the goal. He looked at Pearl. "You cheated," he muttered. A small smile tugged at his lips. "I used strategy," she shot back. The match grew intense. Corbin took it with a seriousness that made Pearl laugh. He wasn't the fierce leader now. He was a guy who hated to lose. He sweat. The heat from his body rose. His skin ran hot. He missed 3 more shots. The final score flashed, 7-2. Pearl won. Corbin stared at the board. He looked at his hands. He looked at Pearl. She was radiant. She held her head high. She was a goal-getter who didn't back down. When she looks at me like that, my brain completely short-circuits. "Say something smart, Corbin." "I want a rematch," Corbin said. He felt a tingle in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was awe. He realized she complimented him. She brought light where there was just duty. "Maybe next time," Pearl said. She patted his arm. His bicep felt like carved steel, hard and solid. "Let's go get some air." Chapter 11. The rose gold compact SUV sat in the corner of the parking lot. The paint shimmered under the streetlights. Pearl hopped onto the hood. The metal was warm from the engine. Corbin stood in front of her. He stayed between her knees. He looked up at her with those amber eyes. They weren't sharp tonight. They were soft. "You're a good winner," Corbin said. "I'm a fair winner," Pearl corrected. She touched the honeysuckle locket at her throat. "Richard never let me win. He said it was bad for his image." Corbin's jaw set. The mention of the ex made his scent turn to bitter ash. He was a fool. A man should want his mate to be strong. "I am strong," Pearl said. She looked out at the city of Aethelgard. "I spent a long time being small. I won't do it again. Not for you. Not for anyone." Corbin reached up. He took her hands in his. His palms were rough and warm. He was the Alpha. He was the shield for his people. But here, he felt small. "I don't want you small," he whispered. "I want you just like this." He looked away for a second. His face went red. The Alpha King was shy. "Take that, Richard. You wanted my dreams dead in an apron, but now I'm being courted by a literal king." "Are you blushing, Corbin?" Pearl teased. She felt a warm sensation in her tummy, the good kind. "The light is just bright," he lied. Pearl laughed. She leaned down. She put her hands on his shoulders. The muscles felt like steel cables. She could feel his heartbeat. It wasn't like a trapped bird. It was like a drum. "I like you, Corbin," she said. He looked up. The shyness vanished. He pulled her closer. His touch was firm. He didn't ask. He just moved. His lips met hers. The kiss felt like a spark in a dry forest. It was electric. Pearl felt a tingle go through her whole body. She didn't pull away. She leaned into him. She felt content. She felt safe. He broke the kiss. He rested his forehead against hers. "I'll wait for you. 35 years. 100. It doesn't matter." "Good," Pearl said. She felt a tingle of hope. "Because I have a lot of things to do first." Chapter 12. The obsidian black armored sedan pulled up to the stone steps of the pack house. Corbin stepped out. He looked tired but happy. He walked into the main hall. Rylan, his beta, stood by a large wooden table. He was reading a map of the forest. "The boss is back," Rylan said. He looked up with a smirk. "You smell like honeysuckle and cat hair." Corbin brushed a stray gray hair from his sleeve. Pookie had left his mark. "Pearl has a lot of energy." "The pack likes her," Rylan said. He leaned back. "Gideon says she's the only human who ever told him to wipe his feet. He respects that. Most wolves are too scared to look him in the eye." Corbin felt a surge of pride. Then, a pang of jealousy hit him. He didn't like other wolves talking about his mate, even Rylan. He felt his wolf side stir. It wanted to growl. It wanted to mark his territory. "I just want 5 minutes without Gideon asking me to sign treaty papers." "She's mine, Rylan," Corbin said. His voice was low. It had that heavy vibe that made the room go quiet. I know, Rylan said. He held up his hands. "I'm just saying, she's good for us. She brings a light to this place. You've been less of a jerk since you met her." Corbin didn't have time to argue. A young wolf ran into the room. He looked pale. He held a thick white envelope. "Alpha," the boy said. "This just came. It's for the pack." Corbin took the letter. He tore it open. His amber eyes scanned the page. His posture went rigid. The relaxed warmth vanished. In its place was a heavy, suffocating anger. "What is it?" Rylan asked. "A legal notice," Corbin said. He tossed the paper onto the table. "They are rezoning the sacred forest for a mall, a human development project." "They can't do that," Rylan barked. "That land is ours. It's been ours for 1,000 years." "They can if they have the money," Corbin said. He looked at the name at the bottom of the page. It wasn't just a company. It was a name he knew from Pearl's stories. Richard. The ex-boyfriend wasn't just a ghost. He was a threat. He wanted to pave over their home. He wanted to kill their dreams. Chapter 13. Pearl was in her bakery. She was finishing a batch of blueberry muffins. The shop felt warm. The blue flames of the gas fireplace hummed in the corner. Pookie sat on the counter. He was busy cleaning his paws. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Pearl answered. Hello? Pearl, you sound busy, a cold, familiar voice said. Pearl's heart slammed against her ribs. Richard. I saw your new friend, Richard said. The one with the black car. He seems rough. Not your type at all. You don't know my type, Richard, Pearl said. She gripped the phone. Her knuckles went white. Why are you calling? I'm doing a bit of business in Aethelgard, Richard said. He sounded smug. I'm building something vast, a mall, right on that old forest patch you like so much. I thought you'd want to know. I'm clearing out the stray dogs. That forest is private land, Pearl said. She felt a wave of rage. She wasn't a housewife in a kitchen anymore. She was a woman with a pack to protect. It was, Richard said, but money changes things. You should come home, Pearl, before your little friends lose their place to sleep. I can make this all go away if you just act like the girl I remember. My ex was an alpha, and look how that turned out. A disaster wrapped in a red flag. I am never coming back to you, Pearl said. Her voice was steady. It was sharp. And you aren't touching that forest. We'll see, Richard said. He hung up. Pearl stood in the kitchen. A cold knot of dread tightened in her stomach. This wasn't nervous excitement. It felt like pure ice. She looked at Pookie. The cat looked back with his yellow eyes. He let out a low meow. She wasn't going to let this happen. She knew how Richard worked. He used money like a club. He used laws to crush people. But he didn't know about the wolf world. He didn't know about Corbin. And he didn't know that Pearl Kingsley was a goal-getter who always found a way to win. She grabbed her purse. She walked to her rose gold SUV. She had a pack to save, and she knew exactly where to start. Pookie, stay here, she said. She drove toward the pack house. The sun was setting. The sky was a bruise of purple and orange. The war was coming, but it wasn't going to be fought with teeth. It was going to be fought with accountability. Chapter 14. The rose gold SUV slowed to a halt in the gravel drive of the pack house. Pearl Kingsley gripped the steering wheel. Her knuckles showed white against the leather. The threat from Richard hummed in her mind like a hornet. He wanted the forest. He wanted her spirit. She stepped out of the car. The evening air felt cool, but the tension radiating from the stone building ahead felt like a furnace. Corbin stood on the wide porch. His amber eyes tracked her movement. Behind him, Rylan and Gideon looked like stone statues, their arms crossed over broad chests. A calm heat usually radiated from Corbin, but now a sharp, suffocating tension filled the air. His anger was a physical presence. It hit Pearl like a shove to the chest. He called you, Corbin said. His voice was a low vibration. It made the glass in the front door rattle. He did, Pearl said. She marched up the steps. She didn't stop until she stood inches from the Alpha King. She looked up. He wants to pave over your home, Corbin. He wants a mall. But more than that, he wants to prove he still owns me. I actually like his pack. They're like overly aggressive, heavily muscled golden retrievers, but they look ready to rip someone's throat out right now. Corbin's jaw tightened. A vein throbbed in his thick neck. I will end him. I will walk into his office and tear his heart from his chest. No human threatens my mate or my land. No, Pearl said. Her voice cut the air. That is what he expects. He wants you to act like a monster. He has lawyers and permits. If you kill him, you lose the forest to the state. You lose everything." Corbin let out a huff of breath. He paced the length of the porch. His boots thudded on the wood. "Then what? We sit and wait for the bulldozers?" "We hold him accountable," Pearl said. She followed him. She grabbed his arm. His bicep felt like a slab of corded steel. "Richard works in shadows and bribes. I know his books. I know his patterns. He thinks I'm a housewife who doesn't understand numbers. I want to lead this, Corbin. I want to take him down in a boardroom, not a back alley." Corbin stopped. He looked down at her small hand on his arm. The rage in his eyes softened. He looked at her with a mix of shock and awe. The Alpha King, a man who ruled with strength and fire, seemed to shrink under her steady gaze. He looked away. A faint flush crept up his neck. "You want to fight a war with papers?" Corbin asked. "I want to win," Pearl said. "I don't want a bloodbath. I want justice. He stole my dreams for years. Now he's trying to steal yours. Let me handle the strategy." Corbin ran a hand through his black hair. He looked at Rylan and Gideon. The two wolves watched with wide eyes. Their leader was being handled by a human woman, and he wasn't growling back. "She has a point, Alpha," Rylan noted. "The humans have laws. If we break them, we lose the forest anyway." Corbin turned back to Pearl. He reached out. His large hand cupped her face. His thumb brushed her cheek. His touch sent a spark through her that made her pulse race. "Fine," Corbin whispered. His voice was thick with emotion. "I will stand behind you. But if he touches you, the laws die. I will burn his world to the ground." "Deal," Pearl said. She felt a surge of content. She had a king at her back, but she was the one with the sword. Chapter 15. A thunderstorm rolled over Aethelgard. Rain lashed the windows of Pearl's apartment, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and white. Inside, the blue flames of the gas fireplace cast a steady, clean glow across the walls. Pearl sat on the soft rug, pulling her knees to her chest. Pookie curled into a gray ball near her feet. The Maine Coon purred, a low rumble that matched the thunder outside. Corbin sat on the sofa behind her. He had shed his jacket hours ago. His dark button-down shirt clung to the wide, thick muscles of his back. He rested his elbows on his knees and looked at the floor. The silence between them held a thick, burning tension. It wasn't the bitter heat of anger. It was the raw, demanding pull of a bond reaching its boiling point. "I worry," Pearl said. She traced a pattern on the rug, keeping her focus on the fire. "I'm just a human, Corbin. Your pack, they look at me and see a liability. I'm not a wolf. I can't shift to protect you. I can't fight with my teeth when the monsters show up. Why does just being in his orbit make my knees feel like overcooked noodles? Focus, Pearl. You need to know if you're enough for a king." Corbin moved. He didn't walk. He flowed with the fluid grace of a predator. He knelt on the rug right in front of her. His heat washed over her like a sudden shockwave. It was a deep, wild warmth that made her cheeks flush. He reached out and took her small hands in his large, rough palms. "You are the strongest person in this city," Corbin said. He tipped her chin up, forcing her to meet his glowing amber eyes. "Strength isn't about sharp claws. It's about a brave heart. You stood up to me the first day we met. You stand up to a man who wants to crush your spirit. You are my missing piece, Pearl. Without you, I'm just a beast wearing a suit." Pearl leaned forward. Her breath hitched in her throat. She released her hands from his grip and reached up. Her fingers traced the sharp line of his jaw. It felt like solid bone under hot skin. She felt the rough stubble on his chin, the frantic pulse beating at his neck. "I'm scared," she whispered, the truth slipping out. "I have you," Corbin promised. His voice was a raspy vibration that sent a shiver straight down her spine. He pulled her flesh against his broad chest. The sudden contact ignited a spark of fire in her blood. Pearl stopped overthinking. She surrendered to the overwhelming rush. His lips crashed down to find hers. The kiss was a breathtaking clash of raw need and desperate trust. He tasted like rain and dark, sweet berries. Corbin moved with a careful restraint that made her ache for more. He was a creature of untamed power, but his hands mapped her waist and back like she was made of fragile glass. Pearl tangled her fingers into his midnight hair, pulling him closer. A low groan rumbled deep in his chest. He stood up in one smooth motion, lifting her into his arms without breaking the kiss. Pearl wrapped her legs around his waist, dizzy with the intoxicating spin of the room. They tumbled into the bedroom. The darkness felt like a velvet shroud. Corbin laid her back on the mattress, his towering frame blanketing her. Skin met skin in the shadows. He shed his dark shirt, revealing a broad chest marked by the geometric wolf tattoo. Pearl ran her hands over the corded muscles of his shoulders, marveling at the firm, unyielding texture of his body. Every touch was electric. He trailed open-mouth kisses down the sensitive curve of her neck, tracing the edge of her collarbone. Pearl arched into his touch, a soft gasp escaping her lips. His large, rough hand smoothed over her hips, dragging a trail of fire everywhere he touched. The rhythm of their breathing matched the driving rain against the glass. It was a slow, deliberate worship. Corbin treated every inch of her skin with total devotion, breaking down her walls with slow, sweeping caresses. When they merged, the union of two distinct worlds was complete. It wasn't just physical contact. It was a binding promise spoken in ragged breaths and tight grips. Pearl felt her lingering doubts burn away into a roaring fire. She matched his intense pace, her nails scoring his back as pleasure coiled tight in her stomach, and burst into a blinding rush of relief. In the quiet aftermath, as the storm outside faded to a gentle drizzle, Corbin held her close. His large frame shielded her from the rest of the world. He pressed a soft kiss to her damp forehead. "I love you, Pearl Kingsley," he whispered into her dark curls. "I love you too," she murmured back, resting her palm flat against his chest. She felt safe. She felt ready. Richard could bring his corporate lawyers and his shiny silver cars. She had a king, and she had a plan. Chapter 16. Warm light spilled across Aunt Tess's botanical bakery. Pearl sat at a flower-dusted table. Maps and old deeds lay scattered across the wood. Aunt Tess paced the floor. She wore an apron stained with blackberry juice. Her gray hair was a wild halo. "Richard always was a snake," Tess said. She slammed a rolling pin onto a slab of dough. "He thinks because he has a gold pen and a sharp suit, he owns the dirt we walk on." "He doesn't," Pearl said. She pointed to a yellowed map and a dusty city ledger. "Look at this, Aunt Tess. This forest land. The old logs say it was a gift 200 years ago. We just have to find the physical deed." "I want accountability in any dealing, even if it means digging through dusty basements for a week." "A gift to who?" Tess asked. She leaned over. "The Kingsley family," Pearl said. Her voice held a note of triumph. Our ancestors were the original caretakers. We didn't own the land, but we held the guardianship. Under the old city laws of Aethelgard, a guardian must sign off on any change to the soil. If there is a burial site or a sacred grove, the land stays untouched. And the wolves? Tess asked. They are the dwellers, Pearl explained. They have lived there since the start. But Richard is trying to use a loophole that says the land is unclaimed. It isn't. It's guarded. By us. A knock at the door made them both jump. A man in a gray suit stood outside. He held a thick stack of papers. Pearl opened the door. The man handed her the folder. Miss Kingsley, I have a cease and desist from the law offices of Richard Vance, the man said. Pearl took the papers. She didn't flinch. Tell Richard I got his gift. Tell him I hope he likes the taste of defeat. The man blinked. He turned and walked to a silver sports car idling at the curb. Richard sat in the back. The tinted window rolled down an inch. His cold blue eyes met Pearl's. He didn't smile. He just watched. Then the car sped away. Pearl walked back to the table. She tore the cease and desist in half. She tossed the pieces into the trash can. It landed on top of the white silk apron Richard had sent before. He's scared, Pearl said. He should be, Tess agreed. You have the wit of your mother and the grit of a wolf. I have something better, Pearl said. She looked at the old maps. I have the truth, and I have a plan to make sure everyone in Aethelgard knows it. She grabbed her phone. She called Corbin. We found it, she said. The loophole. We need to get the pack ready for a different kind of fight. Chapter 17. Pearl was finishing a batch of honey cakes when the bell above the bakery door chimed. The sound was sharp. The air in the shop turned cold. Richard stepped inside. He looked out of place in the warm, sugar-scented room. His suit was dark. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Behind him, a man in a black jacket stood guard. It was Corbin. He had his hood up. He looked like a hired bodyguard. He didn't speak. He didn't growl. But the air around him felt like a storm. Pearl, Richard said. He looked around the shop with a sneer. It's a quaint little place. A bit small for someone with your potential. Pearl kept her focus on the cakes. She didn't look up. It's mine, Richard. That makes it big enough. If he growls at me one more time, I'm buying a water spray bottle. Oh, wait, that's for Corbin. For Richard, I need a sledgehammer. Richard walked to the counter. He tapped his gold fountain pen on the glass. The forest rezoning goes through on Friday. The board of directors is already on my side. You're fighting a lost cause, Pearl. Come back to the city. I've bought that penthouse you liked, the one with the marble kitchen. I don't like marble, Pearl said. She finally met his eyes. And I don't like you. Richard's face twisted. His eyes flashed with a cold, predatory light. You're playing with things you don't understand. Your friend there, he looks like trouble. I've seen the way he looks at you. It's animalistic. Corbin shifted his weight. The floorboards groaned under his feet. He didn't move toward Richard, but his scent changed. The bitter ash smell filled the room. Richard wrinkled his nose. What is that smell? Richard asked. It's like something died. It's the smell of a man who lost, Pearl said. Richard leaned over the counter. He lowered his voice. I will take that forest. I will build my mall. And then I will buy this shop and tear it down just to see you cry. You belong in a kitchen, Pearl. My kitchen. Corbin took a step forward. The movement was a blur. He stood right behind Richard. He didn't touch him. He just loomed. The Alpha King was a head taller than the human. The heat radiating from Corbin's body made Richard sweat. Richard turned. He looked up at the bodyguard. He saw Corbin's amber eyes. For a second, a flash of fear crossed Richard's face. He stepped back. "Watch your tone," Corbin said. His voice was a low rumble. It wasn't the alpha voice, but it had a weight that made Richard's knees shake. "Is this who you're with now?" Richard sneered, trying to hide his fear. "A thug?" "A king," Pearl corrected. Richard let out a harsh laugh. He turned and walked to the door. "Friday, Pearl. Be at the boardroom at 10. Bring your papers. Bring your thug. It won't matter." The door slammed. The bell chimed one last time. Corbin pulled back his hood. His face was flushed with the effort of holding back his wolf. His nostrils flared. "I wanted to eat him," Corbin admitted. "I know," Pearl said. She walked around the counter. She took his hands. "But you didn't. You showed restraint. That's what a king does." "I hate him," Corbin said. "Me too," Pearl agreed. "Which is why we are going to make him lose everything." Chapter 18. The sun fought to pierce the morning fog of Aethelgard as Pearl Kingsley stood before her bedroom mirror. She adjusted the lapels of a charcoal gray power suit. The fabric felt crisp and held a sharp edge that matched her mood. Underneath, she wore a blouse the color of a winter sky. She was a goal-getter, and today, the goal was survival for the pack and the death of Richard's ego. She reached up to touch the honeysuckle locket at her throat. The cool metal grounded her. It was a tactile reminder of why she fought. She wasn't a housewife in a silk apron. She was a woman with a plan. Corbin stood in the doorway. His frame filled the space. He wore a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The dark fabric strained against the thick muscles of his forearms. His skin ran hot, and the heat radiated off him in waves. He watched her with amber eyes that held a mix of pride and a shyness he only showed to her. He looked like a king who had found his queen, and the realization made his heart thud against his ribs like a drum. He wanted to scoop her up and hide her from the world, but he knew she was the spearhead of this attack. His shyness is a weapon he doesn't know he has, and it makes my knees feel like overcooked noodles. "You look like a storm," Corbin said. His voice was a low rumble. It vibrated in the small room. "I feel like one," Pearl said. She turned to grab her leather briefcase. In the corner, Pookie sat on a high stool. The Maine Coon was a mass of gray fur and judgment. He watched a steaming mug of coffee on the edge of the dresser. Pearl had poured it a minute ago, but she was too focused on her briefcase to take a sip. Pookie looked at the mug. He looked at Corbin. With a deliberate flick of his paw, he swiped the ceramic cup. The mug tipped. Coffee splashed across the floor. It soaked into the white rug Pearl had bought 3 months ago. The rug was a total loss. The stain was the size of a dinner plate and dark as midnight. "Pookie!" Pearl cried out. The cat let out a sharp meow and jumped down. He trotted to Corbin and rubbed against his shins, leaving tufts of gray fur on the Alpha's black trousers. Corbin looked down at the mess on the floor. He looked at the cat. He didn't growl. He just let out a huff of breath. "He did that on purpose," Corbin noted. "He hates when I'm stressed," Pearl said. She grabbed a towel and threw it over the stain. "I don't have time to fix this. It stays like that until we get back." She checked her watch. It was 9 in the morning. The board meeting started at 10. She checked her briefcase one last time. The folder with the ancient maps and the guardianship deeds was tucked inside. She had spent a week digging through the basement of the bakery with Aunt Tess to find these papers. They were the key to the fight. Corbin reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough and warm. "We go now?" he asked. "We go now," Pearl agreed. They walked out of the apartment. Pearl locked the door. She didn't look back at the ruined rug. She had bigger fish to fry. They headed down to the parking lot where the obsidian-black armored sedan waited. It looked like a shark in a pool of minnows. Corbin opened the door for her. He was her shadow, her protector, and today, her most silent ally. Chapter 19. The obsidian-black armored sedan glided through the streets of Aethelgard. Corbin drove with one hand on the wheel. His large signet ring caught the light as he turned toward the business district. The glass and steel towers of the city rose up like a forest of needles. Pearl sat in the passenger seat. She watched the people on the sidewalk. They had no idea that a war for the soul of the city was about to happen in a room 60 stories up. They reached the Vance corporate tower. It was a cold building of polished stone. Richard's silver European sports car was parked right at the front. It sat there like a boast. Corbin pulled the sedan to a stop. He stepped out and walked around to Pearl's side. He moved with the grace of a predator. As they walked into the lobby, the air changed. The natural, wild heat that clung to Corbin fought against the sterile, artificial chill of the building. This cage of glass and steel feels like a trap for a beast, but I will stay in it for her. The elevator ride was a blur of chrome and silence. Pearl felt her nerves twist into a tight knot. She clutched her briefcase. Corbin stood behind her. His heavy presence was a shield. When the doors opened, they were met by a receptionist who looked like she was made of plastic. "Miss Kingsley, Mr. Vance is expecting you," the woman said. They walked into a long hall. At the end stood a pair of double doors made of dark oak. Pearl pushed them open. The boardroom was vast. A long table of black marble sat in the center. Around it sat 12 men in expensive suits, the board of directors. At the head of the table sat Richard. Richard looked up. He wore a navy suit that probably cost a year of Pearl's bakery profits. He tacked his gold fountain pen on the marble table. His cold blue eyes scanned Pearl, then moved to Corbin. He let out a sneer. "Pearl, you're on time. I'm impressed," Richard said. "I'm here to finish this, Richard," Pearl said. She took a seat at the far end of the table. Corbin stood right behind her. He didn't sit. He just loomed. His amber eyes were fixed on Richard's throat. "Finish it?" "Yes," Richard said. He slid a thick stack of papers across the stone table. "These are the surrender papers for the forest. Sign them, and the bakery stays open. Refuse, and I start the bulldozers at noon." Pearl looked at the papers. She didn't touch them. She could smell the scent of rot and death coming off Richard. It was a sour smell that made her skin crawl. She looked at the board members. They looked bored. They thought this was just a simple real estate deal. They had no idea they were sitting in a room with a king. "I don't sign surrender papers, Richard," Pearl said. Her voice was steady as a rock. "I sign accountability reports, and yours is due." Richard's face went red. He gripped his gold pen until his knuckles went white. "You have no cards to play, Pearl. The city has signed off on the rezoning. The forest is mine." "Not yet," Pearl said. She opened her briefcase. Chapter 20. The room went silent as Pearl pulled a thick, leather-bound folder from her briefcase. She laid it on the marble table with a thud. Richard's lead lawyer, a man with a face like a dried raisin, leaned forward. He adjusted his glasses. "What is this nonsense?" the lawyer asked. "This is a history lesson," Pearl said. She flipped open the folder. Inside were the maps and deeds she and Aunt Tess had found. The paper was yellow and smelled of dust and old wood. "Richard claims the forest is unclaimed land. He says it's a waste of space. But Aethelgard was built on laws that go back centuries." "I want accountability in every dealing, even if I have to bleed for it." Pearl pointed to a map from the 1800s. "This forest was never part of the city grid. It was a gift from the first governor to the Kingsley family. We are the guardians. Under the Charter of 1842, no guardian land can be sold or rezoned without the consent of the bloodline." The board members began to whisper. They looked at each other. Richard's smug smile began to fade. He snatched the map and looked at it. "This is ancient junk," Richard shouted. He threw the map back onto the table. "It's been 100 years since anyone used these laws. They are dead." "Laws don't die just because you ignore them, Richard," Pearl said. She looked at the board. "The city charter states that as long as a Kingsley is alive, the forest is protected. I am the last of that line, and I do not give my consent." The lead lawyer looked at the papers. His hands started to shake. He whispered something to Richard. Richard's face turned from red to a pale, sickly white. The heavy weight of pure fury filled the room as Corbin's anger flared. He didn't move, but the temperature in the room seemed to rise. "You think a piece of paper stops $100 million project?" Richard sneered. He stood up. He slammed his palms onto the table. "I have the mayor in my pocket. I have the zoning board. This is my city." "It's not your city," Corbin said. His voice was a low growl. The board members flinched. The weight of his alpha presence hit them like a shove. "It belongs to the people and the wolves." Richard laughed. It was a harsh, desperate sound. "Wolves? You're a thug in a suit. You're nothing." Richard turned to his lawyer. Tell them the deed is a fake. We had our researchers look into this. There is no original Kingsley deed on file at City Hall." "That's because it's not at City Hall," a new voice said. The double doors of the boardroom swung open. Aunt Tess walked in. She wore a bright purple dress and a hat that looked like a bird's nest. In her hands, she carried a small, iron-bound box. Chapter 21. Aunt Tess marched to the table. She ignored the board members. She ignored Richard's glares. She set the iron box in front of Pearl. "I had to dig through the old flower bins for this one," Tess said. She took a key from around her neck and opened the box. Inside lay a scroll of parchment. It was thick and held a wax seal that hadn't been broken in a century. The seal bore the crest of the Kingsley Guardians, a honeysuckle vine wrapped around a sword. "This is the original deed," Pearl said. She broke the seal. The sound was a sharp crack in the quiet room. She unrolled the parchment. "Signed by the governor and the high alpha of the forest packs. It's a dual custody agreement. The land cannot be touched unless both the guardian and the king of the forest agree." Aunt Tess gave Richard one last, triumphant smirk, patted Pearl on the shoulder, and quietly slipped out the double doors to head back to the bakery and let her niece finish the fight. I would burn 1,000 cities to keep that light in her eyes. Pearl looked at Corbin. He met her gaze. The shyness was gone. He looked like the Alpha King he was. He turned his attention to Richard. "I am the king of that forest," Corbin said. His voice had the power of a mountain. It forced the board members to drop their eyes. "And I do not agree." Richard's mouth hung open. He looked at the deed. He looked at his lawyer. The lawyer was busy stuffing his own papers back into his briefcase. The man knew a lost cause when he saw one. "This is a lie!" Richard screamed. He grabbed his gold fountain pen and threw it at the wall. It hit a painting of the city and shattered. Black ink splattered across the canvas. "I spent $40 million on the permits alone. I have investors. I have a timeline." "You have a pile of scrap paper, Richard," Pearl said. She stood up. She felt a surge of content. She felt radiant. "The rezoning is dead. The forest stays as it is. And you? You're done." The board members started to stand up. They didn't look at Richard. They looked at Pearl with a new respect. They looked at Corbin with fear. They realized they had almost destroyed something ancient and powerful for a man who didn't even know his own city's history. "Meeting adjourned," the chairman of the board said. He walked out without a second look at Richard. Richard sat back in his leather chair. He looked small. He looked like a child who had lost his favorite toy. He stared at the broken pen on the floor. The ink pool looked like a dark hole. Pearl picked up her folder and the ancient deed. She walked to the door. Corbin followed her. He stopped at the door and looked back at Richard. "If I ever see you near the forest again," Corbin said. He didn't have to finish the sentence. The look in his amber eyes was enough. They walked out of the tower. The air outside felt fresh. The fog had lifted. Pearl looked at the obsidian sedan. She looked at Corbin. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," Corbin said. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. But as they reached the car, Pearl's phone buzzed. It was a text from a blocked number. "The forest is one thing, Pearl, but I still have the bakery. Check your insurance." Pearl felt a chill go through her. The war wasn't over. It was just moving to a new front. Chapter 22. The chairman of the board pushed his leather chair back. The screech of metal on the marble floor echoed through the vast room. He reached for his briefcase, his face a mask of exhaustion. Pearl Kingsley stood her ground at the end of the long table. She did not move. She did not look at the exit. She placed one hand on the ancient deed and the other on the cold surface of the black stone. "The meeting is not over," Pearl said. Her voice rang out sharp and clear. It hit the walls and bounced back. The board members froze. They looked like statues caught in a mid-step. Richard Holloway, the man who had tried to crush her spirit for years, slammed his hand onto the table. "The deed is a fluke, Pearl. A relic. The zoning board has the final word, and they answer to me. Leave now before I have security drag you out." Corbin stepped forward. He did not say a word. He stood right behind Pearl, his broad chest a wall of heat. The obsidian fabric of his dress shirt strained against the thick slabs of muscle on his shoulders. He was a mountain of a man, and his presence alone seemed to push the air out of the room. He did not growl. He did not snarl. He simply breathed, his amber eyes fixed on Richard's throat. The temperature in the room climbed. It felt like a furnace had been kicked to life. The suits at the table began to tug at their collars. Sweat beaded on Richard's upper lip. "If I shift right now, I can end this in a heartbeat." But she wants to win this her way. "Security is not coming, Richard," Pearl said. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a sleek black tablet. She had charged it at the bakery that morning and tucked it into the side pocket of her leather bag. She slid it across the marble. It came to a stop right in front of the chairman. "I suggest you look at the drone footage I took of the forest edge last night." Richard let out a harsh laugh. Drone footage? You think some pictures of trees will stop a project of this scale? Look at the pits, Richard, Pearl said. Her hazel eyes were cold. Look at the barrels with the Vance corporate logo on the side. The ones leaking black sludge into the creek that feeds the city's reservoir. The board members crowded around the tablet. Their faces turned a sickly shade of gray. Richard's rage bubbled over. He stood up, his face a deep shade of red. He looked like a man about to burst. You think you can trap me? Richard screamed. He pointed a trembling finger at Pearl. I built this company. I own this city. You are nothing but a girl who should be in a kitchen, waiting for my call. You are a waste of space. Corbin took one more step. His shadow fell over Richard, cold and dark. He didn't touch the man, but the heavy vibe he projected made the air feel like lead. The board members retreated toward the walls. They felt the push of a power they didn't understand. It hit them in the gut, forcing them to look at the floor. Sit down, Corbin said. His voice was a low vibration that made the water in the glasses on the table ripple. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Richard fell back into his chair as if a hand had shoved him. He gasped for breath, his eyes darting around the room. He was a predator who had just realized he was in a cage with something much larger. Chapter 23. The silence in the boardroom was thick enough to choke on. Pearl Kingsley watched the directors. They stared at the screen of the tablet. The footage showed the scarred earth of the forest edge. It showed the toxic rot Richard had hidden under the guise of progress. This wasn't about a mall. This was about a burial ground for his company's crimes. The mall was a front, Pearl explained. She paced the length of the table, her charcoal gray suit fitting her like armor. Richard needed a way to pave over the evidence of the illegal waste dumping his factories have done for a decade. If he built a mall, the concrete would hide the poison forever. He didn't want the forest. He wanted a tomb. The chairman looked up. His blue eyes held a mix of horror and disgust. Is this true, Richard? She's lying! Richard shrieked. He looked at his board of directors, the men he had fed for years. She's a jilted ex-girlfriend! She wants to ruin me. The barrels have your signature on the manifests, Richard, Pearl said. She pulled a stack of printouts from her briefcase. She had printed them from Aunt Tess's old computer. I found the digital trail. You didn't delete the records from the old server, you just hid them. The board members turned on Richard. The scent of bitter ash in the room was overwhelming. It was the smell of Richard's lies burning down. The directors began to shout. They saw the ruin of their own reputations in those images. They saw the lawsuits and the jail time. Richard wanted her dreams dead in the kitchen, but she just used his own greed to burn his world to the ground. You're fired, the chairman said. He looked at Richard as if he were a piece of trash. The board will cooperate with the city. We will fund the cleanup, and we will make sure you never work in this town again. Richard's face went pale. He looked at the men around him. They were the ones who had clapped for his speeches and toasted his wins. Now, they wouldn't even look him in the eye. He was a ghost in his own tower. Pearl felt a surge of content. It wasn't a victory of blood, but a victory of truth. She felt radiant. She looked at Corbin. He was watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip. He didn't need to be a king to show her respect. He saw her as his partner. I'm not done, Richard whispered. He stood up at a snail's pace. His eyes were wide and glazed. He looked at Pearl. You think you won? You think you can take everything from me? He surged across the carpet. He reached for Pearl's arm, his fingers clawing the air like talons. He wanted to hurt her. He wanted to drag her down with him. "You are mine," Richard roared. Corbin's heart thudded like a drum against his ribs. He moved to intercept, his hand reaching for Richard's chest, but Pearl was faster. Chapter 24. Pearl Kingsley did not flinch as Richard lunged for her. She did not scream. She did not hide behind Corbin's broad frame. She reached into her leather briefcase, the same one she had carried into the lobby, and gripped the cold, heavy handle of her steel tire iron. She had placed it in the bag before leaving the bakery, knowing Richard's nature. She swung the iron up. She didn't hit him, but she stopped him in his tracks. The heavy metal bar sat an inch from Richard's nose. He froze. His breath hitched. He stared at the scratched steel. He stared at the weapon of a woman who was done being a housewife. "Don't touch me," Pearl said. Her voice was ice. "I am not the girl you left in that kitchen, Richard. I don't need your permission to exist, and I certainly don't need your hands on me." Corbin stopped behind her. He stood like a silent guardian, his amber eyes glowing with a fierce light. He didn't need to shift. He didn't need to use his alpha voice. The sight of Pearl holding her own against her monster was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I want to tear him apart for even thinking of touching her. But her fire is more than enough to burn him." Richard looked at the tire iron. He looked at the woman holding it. He saw the fire in her eyes. He saw the strength in her grip. He looked at the board members who had turned their backs on him. He looked at Corbin, the man who stood like a king at her side. He realized he had lost everything. His company was gone. His pride was a heap of rubble. His mall was a pipe dream. The forest, the land he had tried to pave over, was protected by the very woman he had tried to break. "You're a monster," Richard whispered. "No," Pearl said. She lowered the tire iron. She didn't drop it. She just lowered it. "I'm a goal-getter, and my goal was to protect my pack. I think I'm done with you." The board members surged toward the exit. They didn't want to be near the fallout. Richard stood alone in the center of the vast marble room. He looked small. He looked like a child who had lost a game of tag. The gold fountain pen lay shattered on the floor, its ink a dark stain on the stone. "Leave, Richard," the chairman said from the doorway. "Security will see you out of the building. Your assets are frozen. Your office is locked." Richard didn't move for a long time. He just stared at the broken pen. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. He didn't look back. He didn't say another word. He was a ghost in a suit. Pearl let out a long breath. A rush of pure, unadulterated adrenaline swept through her veins. She looked at Corbin. He reached out and took the tire iron from her hand. He tucked it back into her briefcase. "You did it," Corbin said. He pulled her into his chest. His heart beat against hers, a steady, powerful rhythm. "We did it," Pearl corrected. The war was over. The forest was safe. The bakery was her own. She looked out the window at the city of Aethelgard. The sun was high in the sky. She felt whole. She felt radiant. "Let's go home," Corbin whispered. "Home," Pearl agreed. Chapter 25. Richard Holloway slumped in his leather chair. The power he once wore like a suit of armor bled away with every second of silence. The chairman of the board stood. He buttoned his coat with fingers that did not shake. He looked at Richard with a gaze of flint. "Richard, you are done. Your seat is empty. Your stock is frozen. Security will escort you to the curb. Leave." The directors followed him out. They fled the room as if the air itself held a plague. Richard stared at the floor. He looked at the black ink from his shattered pen. The stain mirrored the ruin of his name. Pearl Kingsley let out a breath. The tension in her shoulders snapped. She felt the weight of the last hour lift. She turned to Corbin. He did not wait. He swept her into his arms. He lifted her feet off the marble. He held her as if she were the only solid thing in a world of ghosts. "She saved my people with a piece of paper and a sharp tongue." Corbin pressed his face into her hair. His scent, pine and rain, soothed the fire in her blood. He pulled back to look at her. His amber eyes glowed with a pride that made her heart thud like a drum. He did not use his alpha voice. He did not have to. His respect for her was a physical force. It struck her with a deep, grounding certainty. It was a good feeling. It was a feeling of truth. My ex wanted me in a kitchen, but this king wants me at his side. Richard watched them. He looked small. He looked like a child who had lost a game of tag. The gold pen on the floor mocked him. It was broken. It was useless, just like his threats. Pearl looked at him one last time. She did not feel hate. She felt pity. He had lived his life as a predator, but he did not know the first thing about a pack. He did not know that strength came from trust, not fear. "The forest is a heritage site now," Pearl said. Her voice was a whip. "You stay away. If I see your car near those trees, I will not call the police. I will call the board, and I will show them the rest of the files I found." Richard did not answer. He stood up. He walked toward the elevator. He did not look back. He was a ghost in a suit of navy wool. He was a man with no home. Corbin set Pearl back on her feet. He took her briefcase. He tucked her hand under his arm. They walked out of the Vance corporate tower. The sun was high. The city of Aethelgard looked bright. The stone and glass sparkled. Pearl felt a surge of energy. She was a goal-getter. She had set a goal to save the forest. She had won. "Let's get out of here," Corbin said. He led her to the obsidian-black armored sedan. He opened the door with a flourish. But as Pearl reached the car, her phone buzzed. It was a text from a blocked number. "The forest is one thing, Pearl, but I still have the bakery. Check your insurance." Pearl felt a brief chill go through her. But as she looked at Corbin and the safety of his obsidian car, she deleted it. Richard was out of power. It was an empty threat from a ghost. As they drove away, Pearl touched the locket at her throat. The metal crest felt warm. "We need to swing by the apartment," she told Corbin, a radiant smile breaking across her face. "If I don't pick up Pookie for the celebration, he'll ruin my other rug." The accountability she craved had been delivered. The forest was whole, and she was a Luna in her own right. Chapter 26. The pack house roared with life. The stone walls vibrated with the sound of wolf song. It was not a growl, it was a celebration. Long tables of dark wood groaned under the weight of roasted meats, steaks, ribs, and briskets piled high. A thick haze of cooking smoke hung in the warm hall. No wine or beer touched the wood. Wolves drank water and fresh juice. They needed their wits for the hunt later. Pearl sat at the head of the table. She had shed her charcoal suit. She wore a simple dress of forest green. She had kicked off her heels, her toes dug into the cool stone floor. She felt content. She felt radiant. The wolves of the pack came to her. They did not bow, they gave her nods of respect. They saw the human who had outsmarted a man with a mountain of gold. Pookie is a menace, but he has the heart of a lion. Pookie sat on the table. He stood before a silver tray. It held the premium salmon Corbin had ordered for his own meal. The Maine Coon did not ask. He did not wait. He tore into the fish with his teeth. His gray fur was a mess of scales and juice. The wolves watched. They saw the cat eat their alpha's food. No one moved. No one growled. They knew the cat was the boss of the house. Corbin walked into the hall. He had changed into a clean black shirt. He saw the cat. He saw the empty tray. He did not get angry. He let out a laugh. It started deep in his chest. It filled the room. He sat next to Pearl. He reached out and scratched Pookie behind the ears. The cat leaned into the touch. I have never felt this much peace in my own home. He is a thief, Corbin said. He looked at Pearl. His amber eyes were soft. He is a king, Pearl corrected. The feast lasted for hours. Gideon and Ryland told stories of the boardroom. They acted out Richard's face when the deed appeared. The hall shook with laughter. Aunt Tess sat near the fire. She held a cup of tea. She watched Pearl with eyes of pride. She knew the Kingsley line was in good hands. Pearl looked at the pack. They were a family. They were a force. They were her people. She felt a warm flutter of joy in her chest. It was a sign of hope. She had found a place where she was appreciated. She had found a man who wanted her dreams to grow, not die. Corbin stood. He held up a glass of water. The room went quiet. To the Luna, to the Guardian, to the woman who saved the trees. The pack stood. Their voices rose in a howl of joy. It was a sound of strength. It was a sound of love. Pearl stood with them. She felt the power of the bond. She was not a wolf, but she was one of them. She was a partner. She was a queen. Chapter 27. Night fell over Aethelgard. The stars fought the glow of the city lights. Pearl and Corbin sat on the porch of the pack house. The air was cool. The gentle night breeze was a comfort. Her rose gold SUV sat in the drive. Its paint caught the moon. It looked like a spark in the dark. About the shift, Pearl said. She leaned against the wood post. Corbin nodded. 35. I know the deal. I keep my word. I want to see the world first, Pearl said. She touched his hand. His skin was hot. His pulse was a steady drum. I want to bake 10,000 cakes. I want to drive my car until the engine dies. I want to be a human for a while longer. I will wait, Corbin said. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a box. It was not made of velvet. It was made of wood from the forest. It was rough. It was real. He opened it. A ring sat inside, a thin band of silver. No diamond sat on top. It held a small stone of amber. It matched his eyes. It was a piece of him. This is not a mark of power, Corbin said. His voice was a whisper. It is a promise. It is a sign that I am yours, as a man, as a wolf. He understands. He truly understands that I am a partner, not a prize. Pearl took the ring. She slid it onto her finger. It felt right. It felt like a part of her. She looked at Corbin. She saw the shy smile on his face. This was the man who ruled a city. This was the man who fought wars. But with her, he was just Corbin. I love you, Pearl said. I love you, he answered. I would wait 1,000 years for another kiss like that. They sat in the quiet. They talked about the future. They talked about a new shop. They talked about a garden for Aunt Tess. They talked about a bigger bed for Pookie. There were no secrets. There were no lies. There was only the truth of the moon and the heat of their bond. Pearl felt a sense of wonder. She had escaped a cage. She had found a forest. She had found a king who did not want to rule her. He wanted to walk with her. She was a goal-getter, and she had found the ultimate prize. Chapter 28. The bakery hummed with life. Golden morning sunlight spilled across the display cases. Pearl Kingsley pulled a tray of muffins from the oven. She wore her apron, the old one, stained with fruit and flour. She looked out the window. Her rose-gold SUV sat at the curb. It looked like a gem in the gray street of Aethelgard. The insurance threat from Richard's text had vanished. The board found his fraud. They found his theft. They paid for the cleanup of the forest. They paid for her peace. Richard was a ghost in a cell now. He had no pen. He had no power. He had only the walls of his room. The bell above the door chimed. Corbin walked in. He did not use the alpha voice. He did not have to. The room felt warm the moment he arrived. He wore a dark shirt. He looked at Pearl with eyes of amber. "Is it time?" he asked. "Almost," Pearl said. She dusted her hands. They walked to the back. Her apartment sat above the shop. They sat by the gas fireplace. The blue flames danced over the fake logs. No embers fell, no wood burned. The heat was steady. It was clean. Pookie jumped onto the couch. He wedged himself between them. He purred. The sound was a low motor. Corbin put his arm around Pearl. She leaned into his chest. She felt the beat of his heart. It was strong. It was sure. Richard thought I was a fragile doll, but Corbin treats me like an equal. "This is the goal," Pearl whispered. "Accountability," Corbin said. He kissed the top of her head. "This is the life I fought for. This is the peace I won." They sat together in the light of the blue flames. The city was quiet. The forest was safe. The bakery was her own. Pearl Kingsley was a Luna. She was a guardian. She was a woman in love, and she was exactly where she wanted to be. The story was whole. The bond was fast. And the king? He was content to be a cat person for as long as it took. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought Pearl was bold for making the Alpha King wipe his muddy boots and surrender his lap to a grumpy cat, wait until you meet the heroine in the next story on your screen. You have to hear this beautiful disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is pure, unhinged chaos.